Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. With Java in full swing, this morning we shine a spotlight on water safety.
This morning inside your spotlight, we're dealing with child water safety tips for the holidays. All courtesy the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and the Aquatics Sport Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me welcome our team lead of the assessment unit at the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, Ahhalia Ramdass, and president of the Aquatics Sports Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Shawn Pouchet. Good morning to you both and welcome to the Now. Well, welcome back to both of you.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having us.
Not a problem at all. Ahhalia, let me start with you in terms of from the Children's Authority perspective, how many reports do we get, or do we have any data that supports a challenge when it comes to water safety, especially around this time of the year?
I can't say that we have statistics with regard to water safety, but as we well know, we do have multiple stories over the past few years of accidental drownings, not even on the beach or at pools, but right there at homes. And so we want to absolutely stress the importance of water safety and the importance of parental supervision or caregiving supervision throughout Java, even when at home, and especially when we're out and about at the beaches, at the poolsides, at the riversides. We want to make sure that parents know where they ought to be and what they ought to do with regard to preparing their children for safety.
Shawn, when it comes to safety in bodies of water, be it in the ocean, the river, and the pool, what are some of the basic one-on-one tips that you want to send to parents this morning when it comes to making sure children are safe?
Well, I think she touched on it. The supervision is key, all right? And the more trained eyes you have, the better. Also, the more trained persons you have, the better, because it's less incident of less occurrence of anything happening.
When you say trained, you mean like lifeguards, or you mean just people who can swim?
Lifeguard instructors, somebody who could identify somebody in difficulty. You know, there are different levels of training, and there are different aspects with respect to first aid and CPR, and then you have the swim instructors and so on. So I think it's a holistic look at it that you need to embrace, and definitely from the perspective of having things in place in terms of signage, you know, definite warning signs and things in terms of when incidents do occur, you have to have the first aid kits and the necessary equipment to ensure that care is taken if any incident is to occur.
And all this applies even when you buy the blow-up pools that you have at home?
Yeah, well, I don't think you will have it to that extent, but you know, just I guess a risk assessment at home just before you're not going to put up a trampoline next to something else. Similarly with a pool, you have to know where you're putting it. If the grounds is skid-free kind of stuff.
Right.
Just the basics to make sure that there are some safety measures in place, and always supervision. All right.
Let me just jump in to piggyback off of that, because as you're saying, and rightly so, not every situation will have professionals present. So we want to stress that when taking our children to waterways or where there is a lot of water, or even at home, we want to be mindful that we have to keep our eyes on children at all times.
Right.
So we should never leave children unattended around bodies of water. We should have our eyes on them. We should limit distractions. If we're at the beaches, rivers, pools, we want to be sure that there's an adult with the children, or there's sufficient adults with the children.
When you say with, you mean in the pool, in the water?
So yes, I would advise if the children want to venture into the water, we're not sitting on the sand and watching them.
Right.
We have to make sure we have someone going with the children into the water for that supervision. We want to ensure that the children aren't swimming alone. So they're swimming with a buddy, they're swimming in a group with adult supervision. They're in the water. And even if you're on the sand, someone is with them, you're on the sand, you're still keeping an eye out. We want to make sure that our children are not wandering off down along the beaches or wandering away from the main pool area. Or anywhere that they might be by themselves and no one is able to have sight of them. And this is really important, especially that adult in the water. And I say this personal experience in Tobago, Java. My nephew was very young at that time, about 3 or 4. We were at a popular beach, very bad weather and these things. The day was sunny, but the weather was still a little bit off. Big wave came in and he literally got picked up on the shore. Water came all the way up, picked him up, and he started to drift away. And we were close enough to grab him so he doesn't go with the current, but it happens
easy as
in
that.
seconds, as easy as that. You're having a good time. You're not being mindful that, hey, a big wave can come at any time and swoop your child up and go. So we want to be sure that when we say supervision, it's not just throwing an eye, it's having someone actively present. Yes, you want to populate the areas where there are lifeguards. If you yourself can get trained in CPR, if you yourself can get trained in those aspects, that's even better.
Yeah.
But be sure that we have persons with children at all times.
Speaking of training, we live on an island, right? There's water all around us. There's water inside, everywhere. Shawn, how important is it, or what age should we start entering our children into learn to swim classes?
Well, it's a personal decision. I mean, there are classes available for kids before they even learn to walk.
Really?
You know, so you could do those introductory classes for persons who want to get their kids exposed from an early age. As a swim coach myself, and also a young father, I would say I would encourage parents to get into safe spaces with their kids in the water. I try to do it without aids, but go in a space where you're comfortable and you're in control, a control setting, and get your children exposed to the water and accustomed to it. One of the things you don't want to curb too much and put too many safety measures with respect to the bravery of the kids and learning their comfort levels in the water, but you just have to control the environment. All right, so we really want them to explore within a safe space. All right, and what does a safe space mean is that you control as much measures as you could without taking away the exploratory aspect of it for the kids.
Okay. And you said without aid, so there's no floaties, no nothing like that?
I mean, if you have the persons in the water with them, like I'm talking about a one-on-one,
right?
Like with your young ones, I would suggest, yes, you go without aid so they get a natural balance in the water as opposed to, an unnatural feel of, I could stand up in the water, that's not natural. So definitely when you get into different aspects of learning, buoyancy and alignment and so on, you could engage with different aids, noodles and floaties and
do we run the risk, Shawn, when we introduce them to that early, they build up that confidence in the water? Do we run the risk of them saying, well, I'm confident enough that I can go in the water when mommy and daddy are not looking?
Yeah, of course you run that risk. So that's where the supervision is there. I think a lot of it is setting boundaries.
Yeah.
All right. Once you set the boundaries and let them know, because most times it's kids. All right. So a group of 5 kids, not all going to be at the same competency.
Right.
And they go and they play and everybody feel, well, hey, John is swimming. I could swim with John too.
Yeah.
You understand? So the key is really understanding your group. I mean, in a pool setting for us, she spoke about having somebody in the water and so on. So in a controlled environment there, we have the training groups going on, and we have somebody still on top, as she spoke about, monitoring the groups.
Right.
Because when you engage with these young swimmers, you could turn your back for a second and somebody's off the wall. And you need that person on top to kind of alert because you're engaged in the teaching. So you may not always be aware of what's happening with all the athletes. And we try to keep it, especially when it's an introductory, I would say under 5 years old, even in a control setting, you don't want to go more than 3 kids to an instructor. So the ratios are very important, and that's in a control setting.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about a birthday party and a pool lime and that kind of thing, you have an understanding of the amount of supervision that is required.
Yeah. Most definitely. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What was your question?
No, you go ahead. I know you want to jump in.
I want to stress as well that you mentioned something before. I can't exactly remember what it is, but it brought to mind also being very explicit when teaching our children about water safety. So
right.
We often take it for granted that they will know it's a body of water, you have to be safe, but you have to teach children about currents and what to do if they get into difficulty. You want to set rules and boundaries, so no rough playing in the water, no holding down of each other in the water. So you want to make sure that you explicitly teach the rules and the boundaries, never taking it for granted that children know this. You want to issue reminders every time you go. So we go to the beach every weekend, you assume they're going to know. No, reinforce the rules and boundaries so that they do know that. And I want to stress, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we spoke about AIDS before, and I want to be sure that we're telling parents, yes, AIDS if we're in a pool, but at the beach, that also introduces a certain level of risk that we should stay away from at the beach.
Tell me about the risk with the AIDS at the beach.
Well, I mean, again, the aids help you with flotation and so on. So if you lose your footing or you're getting up in a space and you're not really going to be able to, if you don't have the competency.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to return to a place of safety, all right, as easily. It tends to go with the flow of it's ready for a controlled environment learning.
Right.
All right. So,
so all the boogie boards and the floaties and the stuff that we see.
Boogie board is more recreational, but you see the arm floaties and so on.
Yeah.
And those tend to pose more of a risk. The life jackets and so you go more for not a beach setting where there's the waves and the undercurrents and so on. If you go down the islands and you want to be in the water,
or if you're out on a boat or something, or you're kayaking or whatever the case is.
But in a beach setting, you want to keep it as natural as possible and just work within the parameters. Yeah.
All right, Ahhalia, before we wrap this morning, any words of advice for parents who might be concerned about, all right, my child can't swim, but it's vacation, I want to carry them out to the beach and thing. Just any final words of guidance, support?
Exactly what we've been talking about. If you're taking your children out for the vacation period, around bodies of water, going to parties, going to camps and all of these things, it's important that you teach your children water safety. Give them the rules, give them the boundaries, explain to them why. Oftentimes we just give them rules and boundaries and we don't tell them why, but you'd be surprised you can explain in the appropriate language level for your 5-year-old versus your 10-year-old versus your 15-year-old. Give them the reasons why we have these particular rules, explain to them so that when they're in this situation, they can recognize signs and they know how to help themselves if needed. And again, we cannot stress how important supervision is. Even if you're going to the beaches with your family, it ideally should not be 1 adult to 10 children, right? Or 2 adults to 10 children. Have enough persons around who are competent or able to raise an alarm and respond if needed. So it's just for parents to remember vigilance at all times when out with our children at the beach, not just for water safety, but beaches are crowded during the vacation time. Children can wander off playing on the sand, so we just want to be mindful.
Most definitely. And Shawn, before we go, is there an age that you should learn to swim, or is there a cutoff age where you shouldn't bother to try and learn anymore?
No, I encourage people to learn to swim, and I think there's been a resurgence of what we call master swimmers, persons who not necessarily masters of the craft, but
they're just a little old.
They ventured a little behind the timeline.
Right.
All right. So definitely is a life skill that at any point in time, especially as you mentioned, we are living on an island. And I know people love to travel throughout the Caribbean, different destinations and so on. Everywhere you go, there's going to be a pool. And I mean, it's just a skill to have. And
just in case.
Yeah, just in case. I mean, one thing I would say is there's no cutoff age. In terms of starting, it's a personal decision. It's something that they should introduce in, I would say, before the age of 5. You should try and get them into the water. Not in a forceful manner. Most programs, I would say, once or twice a week is sufficient. And then you look at unstructured stuff where you go to the beach, go down the islands, you go some water park or something that they get a fun engagement with.
And
they're not gonna love it if you do a regimented program from 3-4 years old. All right, but important too in terms of these camps and different programs. We have a lot of. As I said, we're now going into the learn to swim aspect of it from our set. So we're going to try to get more clubs into the association. But as it stands right now, there are 20 registered clubs, and you can get aligned with them throughout the communities. Trinidad and Tobago.
And they have everything from learn to swim all the way up to the masters.
Learn to swim all the way up to the masters will be available.
Thank you guys so very much for joining us this morning and for sharing this information. And do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Come on, blessings. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shawn Pouchet, President of the Aquatics Sport Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and Ahhalia Ramdass, team lead of the assessment unit at the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Remember, you can always call the Children's Authority at 800-2014 or 996. We take a quick break and we come back with more right here on the Now Morning Show. Stay tuned.